Okay, good morning. How's everyone? Thank you guys for joining today. Certainly want to thank Mediapost, Seth, John, Julie, the whole team. Appreciate it. And thank you guys for coming. It is a holiday weekend, so I appreciate you listening in. So just a little bit on me and my background. I think I still have maybe a few more months to share this piece of my background. I do lead business operations for location scientists, which I'll tell you a bit about. But my background is 15 plus years on the agency side. I'm super excited about what we're doing, and I joined the company because of my experience on QSR, retail, a lot of brick and mortar businesses that I thought were in need of a solution that our startup companies, beginning to help companies kind of manage around and drive additional performance outcomes. So we'll talk to you about some findings that we discovered across privacy, which is a major impact for most of your businesses, and how it impacts the location data that you use through your CRM, through your media targeting, your audience development, your attribution, a lot of environments. So we'll jump into that a bit, and I'll tell you a little bit about our company to start us off. So first things first is we don't sell media, we don't sell audiences, we don't sell attribution. The simplest way I like to explain what we do for folks that are familiar with the digital space is we're a sort of double verify of sorts, specifically for location data. And so if you're in a marketplace where you want to have confidence, did that person actually visit a KFC? Did that person actually visit McDonald's 5 times? Or was your frequency or your recency data, was that accurately represented? We help you diagnose that with the partners that you work with. And we've seen some noticeable results in helping customers take a very close look at it. And so the reason that we do exist is there's a massive market of location-based marketing. Many of you in this room, I imagine, play in that space. Additionally, and this is maybe what drew me to the company in my role, is location-based marketing is quite expensive. If you look at the cost of an audience that looks at a sort of standard behavioral trait of cookie-based behaviors, it's about 20 times more to get that same type of audience if you look at specific location-based data. So it does require a bit of rigor into what you're paying for and how you pay for it. And no knock on any of the agency people in here, because I was an agency person, but it is important to know that the way that you discover this transparency in your day-to-day world is typically a spreadsheet sort of RFI that kind of lists out self-submitted responses. So we kind of take that subjectivity out of the analysis so that folks like you can make smart decisions on who you want to partner with, how you want to apply that data to your marketing, and we're quite thrilled about it. Privacy has become a super important part of it. And so I always think of marketing in 3 phases. The first phase, which some of us were sort of born in, which I call the efficiency phase. If you can negotiate and get good costs, you had a great career ahead of you. You know, the second was really around data. Let's toss around as many acronyms as we possibly can to confuse our customers into thinking we're super smart and we know data. And then the last is really about consent. You know, a lot of what you guys do in the QSR space is about loyalty and about customer engagement, and violating that consent is one of the easiest ways to really disrupt that opportunity. So we think we take a really close look at how location data is being managed around your customers and how they consent and allow you an opportunity to create that connection. So the results are pretty solid, right? And so, you know, I'm a very big fan, and I like to rely on the fact that my history is as a marketer. I'm much less interested in observational metrics. I think most people in this room have so many data points to manage on a day-to-day basis to begin with, and I'm much more interested in how data that we provide you can actually impact performance. So what we've seen so far, starting from the left of this piece, is we observed about 500,000 impressions through one of our reports earlier, and thanks to John and Mediapost for allowing us to come back half a year ago to talk about that report. And what we discovered is that this is maybe where we sound like the bad cop, but for most marketers that believe they're buying in-app GPS targeted inventory, we found on average 65% of what you buy is actually low quality. So it's typically IP beta stuff, typically not in the browser, and in some cases actually fraudulent. So when you remove that, we run a number of diagnostics where we're able to look at improvement in efficiency, improvement in footfall, and on average we see about a 40% lift in driving that. So you don't have to believe me. Many of you may, if you followed anything about our company, we're pretty proud that we've announced a major partnership, and it's public, with Horizon Media out of New York. They've really kind of stepped up and said that we're an agency that believes in complete transparency. We believe in complete honesty with our customers, and we're a performance-driven company. They work with a lot of QSRs and retails and companies that really rely on location data, and so they've partnered with us to essentially pre-vet all the audiences, all the attribution companies, and all the media that gets delivered around location marketing because they're aware of this challenge. And the case study that we're pretty proud to talk about that'll kind of bleed into our privacy discussion is we monitored a QSR that Horizon manages. There's likely those people may be here or may not, but what we actually saw was we observed in an environment in which this customer, for the last several years, using existing technologies, believed that they were 100%, or at least highly accurate with their media, and proven points supported by Horizon is that we actually saw about 18% of the media that was delivered, guys, was delivered over 125 miles away from where the actual store was. We can talk a bit about how that happens when we're out of this room. I'd be happy to get into the weeds of it. And 7% of it was actually suspicious behavior. So these are things that we help marketers really get a hold of and help drive your marketing. And the result of this, if you take advantage of this kind of data, because there's a cost for it. Yeah, you don't want to spend another tech tax to just be able to observe this, but if you take advantage of this, what we were able to deliver to that relationship and to more of their customers is 25% actual savings that goes back into your hardworking media. It goes back into your CRM development. It goes back into your sort of data relationships and partnerships that you can leverage for your business. So, we offer 4 key opportunities for marketers. We validate the accuracy of media delivery. We also look at the accuracy of location-based audiences, so audiences that are built off of GPS or IP-based data that is derived from your phone. And we're able to validate the data that actually informs things like frequency shoppers that are visiting your stores, or competitive shoppers that may have visited, who's not here today, one of your competitors, right? We help you look at that. And then we also validate attribution, which will be really key for our privacy report, so I'll hold tight on that. And then we have a suite of behavioral insights that look across how people actually behave and visit and travel, and how they sort of function around your commercial territories. So it's a relatively solid offering that we think has been super helpful for the market. We're about 2 years old. We're a UK-based company. I've launched our business here in the United States, and so far we've been pretty thrilled to be able to offer these services. So let's get into the privacy piece. So there is a 35-plus report that you guys will get as a follow-up, and feel free to read through it. We've been endorsed by the 4As, we've been endorsed by TAG, we've been endorsed by IAB, as well as MRC for the findings. So you don't have to trust me. And one of the beauties about it is that we don't sell any competing offerings. So as much as you'd want to buy some audience from me or media, you just can't. We don't do it. We serve as essentially a consultative service to smart brands like you, so that you can sort of isolate these challenges in the industry. And so we decided to take a timestamp look at the most controlled privacy relevant environment for the United States, and that was around iOS 13. The reason that we looked at iOS 13 and we didn't look at CCPA is because, one, CCPA just launched on January 1st, so we didn't have data to be able to observe transactional and behavioral data against that. But iOS 13 is actually quite interesting. If you think about privacy and how it impacts your sort of browser behavior, I'm going to make a fairly safe assumption that every single person in this room, when you get that pop-up that says, would you like to share your cookies in exchange for viewing this browser, every one of you opt into it. You just want to be done with it and just get the process over with. So there really isn't a true opportunity to control your privacy. However, with iOS 13, this was a revolutionary update to operating systems across the globe, specifically with Apple devices, which represent 45% of the US population's iPhone or smartphone usage. The 3 updates were, or 4 really, you now have a few new options. One, which existed before, when you enter into an app or you turn on your phone, you get an option to share your location data while you're in the app. Yeah, so that makes things really valuable. So we talk about those loyalty apps that all of you all have. You know, we don't talk a bunch about that today, but that really incentivizes you to create a great experience for your customers so that they want to share that app with you, share that data with you, yeah? And then the other is being able to share that location in the background, right? And so background location data is all the stuff that you have to actually use when you work with your agencies or you work with your research partners and they go, hey, every ad that we delivered, we saw a 30% lift in store visitation. How does that happen? That happens because your phone is tracking where you are always throughout the day. Very difficult for me to be able to attribute if you visited a KFC or a Burger King or a Popeyes, if I've only shared my location 4 times a day, which is when I'm in the app. Okay, so we've actually taken a look at how that's impacted behavior. And then you get reminders, yeah? And so you make these choices and you say, I want to share my data while I'm in the app or in the background. But then once you make that choice, Apple's becoming much more mindful about ensuring that your opt-in behavior is consistently managed and communicated to you as a consumer, and they've been quite public about that. So we thought this was a really neat environment for us to take a look at. How would privacy, if presented in a transparent and controllable way, impact the data that you all rely on for your marketing? And so a couple of key takeaways that we really walked away with. I think the first was that background location data, like I mentioned, was tremendously impacted, and we'll show you some state of data on that. Then we reference what we call foreground data, guys. So foreground data is when you're in the app. It just makes sense, right? So I'm in the app, I'm actually actively involved, and so that essentially makes it a foreground or a sort of transparent and forward way of essentially making my location data available to marketers. Less impacted, partly because we still see a tremendous amount of value from great app experiences like the ones that you all have that hold people and keep them accountable and interested in sharing their location data. And then the last, I think, is that, you know, in order to really mitigate this or at least manage around it, guys, I am certainly not a CRM expert, but I do have to imagine, and Forrester has a really good report on it as well if you're interested, what becomes a lot more important for you all that look to gather great first-party data within your applications in the privacy and consent environment is to offer value, right? To offer a great experience that incentivizes people to actually take advantage of it. When we saw this noticeable decrease in background location data, guess what? It wasn't from the stuff that you actually use every day. It was things like gaming apps. You have no reason to actually share a location data within something that doesn't bring you back value. So it starts to really give yourselves an opportunity to stand out and create a meaningful connection. So these were essentially our 2 big statistics that we discovered, guys. So we saw to the left, 24% decrease in data that is available for you to target your customers with media. So someone earlier mentioned it's important for us to manage penetration in the market versus frequency. Penetration is driven by reach. Reach is driven by availability of media and audiences. So we're seeing on a given basis across Apple device users, 24% less available supply for you to buy today because of privacy. What does that mean? If you're not seeing an increase in price, you have to be experiencing a decrease in quality. The most notable, however, was a 68% decrease in background location data. To me, as an ex-agency person, this is where I became very interested. When it's holiday season or it's football season and I've got to really drive good customers and I've really got to scale up, and I could never scale up that audience when I bought programmatically, but all of a sudden, during my critical time period of my business, I'm able to scale. Yeah? And so for us, we started looking at if there's a 68% decrease of the data that builds those audiences and also informs your attribution, you have to start wondering, is that data accurate? Is that data reliable? And then how does it impact your business? So this chart to the left is just a really quick sample of what we observed. The blue is just a perspective of the actual available data signals across Apple devices that began in the timestamp. September 20th, which was before iOS 13 launched, and then prior, a month after iOS 13. And we saw this trend exist for the remainder of the quarter. And I referenced that 68% decrease in background location data. So this is a real life example, guys, in case you think that what we observe is, you know, just sort of a fictional perspective. What we're looking at now is the result of a major QSR that sits within your category in the top 3 across the category. We actually audited audiences that they were actually buying that had a competitive trait. And they said, we want to reach people that have visited 5 of our competitors, and we got a sample set. We looked across an audience that was sold to that customer, represented about 875,000 people in a very small local area. Your businesses are quite local, and they're super relevant to your franchisees. After we audited this to determine, number one, were the actions that were sold to you really present in the audience? So did they visit? Was there a 5-time recency? What was their, was there a 5-time frequency? How recently did they visit the store? What was the dwell time? We saw that only 5.4% of the audiences that this particular QSR audience bought was accurate and usable and credible to actually drive the penetration and business performance that you actually want. And so I know I'm getting the time click. So what I'll close up with is the key takeaways for us guys is that we try to treat this insight. I think about our spaces for folks that have been in the industry for a while. It's sort of similar to viewability. When viewability launched, I can remember how hard it was for people to actually believe that this was a challenge. And I also remember how hard it was for people to really believe that it would have an impact on their pricing and their availability of supply. And so we think that we're at the advent of something that's quite relevant for marketers that are quite conscious about the quality and consent-based nature of their data. And what we encourage people to do is, number one, whether it be us or if there are other companies that offer a similar scenario but don't sell competing offerings, which we haven't found, audit your data, ensure that you have transparency and control over what you use to drive the business results for your work. IP data is super important if you think about OTT, the second conference that you guys are going to be hosting around online video delivery, same challenges in that environment. And then the last is to be super prepared to think about how you manage cost parameters for the media and data that you actually purchase to drive your business. So thanks for allowing me the time, a super sort of scientific way of looking at the market. And of course, if there are questions, please feel free to find us in the hallway. Thank you so much.
Jason, as always,